impact, it's, I think it will always be sort of a moving target. I mean, there are always certain metrics that you can measure. So it's difficult, but you know, there are metrics and there are organizations out there that are trying to crack that nut. Quite frankly, the best way we do it is, you know, through our newsletters, through our blog, is just telling the story of what our borrowers are doing is the best way to do it. And then it's amazing, I mean, the websites of our borrowers are very detail oriented as well, in terms of just taking people, you know, who are the uninitiated and just guiding them through the whole step function of how, you know, how a Runa tea gets, you know, in your hand from the shelf, from all the way where it's coming from. I think that's the best way to do it. But we've got our own tracking tool. There's all sorts of different tracking tools. There's like B corporations. That's a movement where for-profit companies are registered as B corporations, which are for-benefit corporations. And so there are a lot of different ways, but I think through sort of storytelling is the best of all.
You know, it's very interesting to talk about impact. Alaska Natives have always had a strong system of accountability. We just haven't called it that. In our traditional villages, everyone had their role and they were held to that role. And so when we talk about accountability, it often comes through storytelling, which is a more natural way for us to talk about it. But we also realize that as we work, especially out in the community, which isn't always welcoming to a program like Sean Luke working with ex-offenders, we have to put it in terms and translate it for them. So I'm going to start off with kind of when we go out and say we would like to start this new business in your community with these particular participants, we talk about it in these ways. So since the inception of the Sean Luke program, we've served well over 100 men. That in terms of kind of savings in the Western terms, you can think about it as over 40 man-years saved from incarceration. And think about the cost savings of that on society. You're not only saving them on the cost of incarceration, which we estimate about over $2.5 million, but also in the fact that these men are contributing members of society. And that's where we really transition to the storytelling. And I can't do it justice, but I'll tell you a story about one of the young men shared with me when I went to our restaurant and he served me. He is a young man. He was just had turned 21, but he had been in jail as an adult because of his crimes. And he was out on parole and enrolled in our program as part of that. And when I sat down and asked him, well, how's it going? He's like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm like, you mean being in prison? He's like, no, being in prison is much easier. I got to play Nintendo and watch movies every day in prison. And I'm like, wow, so you're coming to this place where people are telling you you can't do certain things. You have to earn the rights to do things just like you would in a traditional village. Why are you doing this? And this holds true, I think, for a lot of Indigenous cultures, is that we don't get better for ourselves, but we get better for our family members and our community. And he looked at me, he's like, I have a daughter who is 2 years old that I don't know, and it's my responsibility, and I have to go through this to make that transition. And so he didn't make it through the 2 full years of the program because there was such a strong desire to be with his family member. He was able to, though, exit within a year and a half, find a job, secure housing, a security deposit, and he is able to reconnect with his daughter. And you know, it's never gonna completely be able to replace the 2 years that he missed, but you know, those are the kind of impacts we make. And I think it's important, just as you were talking about all of the families you work with, to keep that person side and connected to the Western definition of success.
Thank you.
A lot of storytelling. The Trace tool is a storytelling tool. It is a phenomenal resource to tell the story of the artisans, tell the story of the fabric, the fibers, tell the indigenous design story. And now with that added layer of actual metrics through sort of reversing that technology back to the artisan and doing the surveys, that adds a completely different layer of storytelling where we can tie it right back to the Progress Out of Poverty Index.
Thank you.
Oh, I have tags. I don't have chocolate or quinoa, but I do have sample tags here, and be happy to hand them out when we're done so that you can actually try the tool out for yourself.
And you also have an example of Indigenous Design's garment, I see,
Yes,
in your blouses.
I'm always in it. I also have a couple of little flyers I can give you as well.
We use metrics and we keep it very simple. Simple and concise metrics, I think, are what we care about most, and we work with the companies to derive those metrics at day one of our investment. If they don't already have metrics, usually they do have some metrics in place. But I think there's something beautiful about simplicity. With Better World Books, we really kind of care about two things with Better World Books: books being diverted from landfills in number of books or pounds of books, and the amount of cash that's going to their nonprofit literacy partners that would not have gone to those partners had it not been for Better World Books. So for us, it's about simple, clear, concise metrics, but that's also represents sort of incremental change that would not have happened if that organization did not exist or wasn't sort of scaling up and growing. In the case of Alter Ego, it's about the additional income that's generated through the sale of fair trade products. And it's about sort of the fair trade premium that's paid on those products. And their metrics, they hopefully grow over time, and our investors are happy to see our quarterly reports on those metrics as long as they're going up and to the right. And we're big fans of B corporations and those kind of things as well. And we do sometimes include some storytelling in our reports. If we're getting sort of qualitative stuff back from Better World Books as nonprofit partners, but for us it's about the metrics, and it's done sort of individually based on each portfolio company.
Elliot?
So this is actually a big issue for us, and we just hired a director of monitoring and evaluation with the support. We got a grant from the Mulago Foundation, who's a social impact-oriented philanthropic organization. So we have a lot of requests for, okay, prove to us what you're doing. And I think on the one hand, yeah, we have numbers, like this is how much increased income has gone to the families, and we're organizing that. But right now what we're really focused on is creating a system for measuring the perception of our producers of how their lives will increase. And so we're creating this survey that goes out to really talk about what are our farmers' expectations of this market and how do they see that this could benefit them. And I think it goes much more into a storytelling line, which I think is super important. But also just engaging in that process and having that conversation beyond being able to at the end have a report that says, oh, we've done so and so and so. But we've actually engaged our producers with the conversation, which also helps them think about what they want from this and can create maybe a more realistic idea of where we're going. If their idea is that they're going to become millionaires or something, and they can go move to Miami and live with all the reggaeton stars, that's probably not going to happen. But we can, talk. We can talk it through, and so it's more of a dialogue. But this is a process that we're just starting right now. I mean, we hired our director of monitoring and evaluation about three months ago, and we're actually getting a team together to start in June with this new idea of measuring expectations. Also, we're within the context of Ecuador, within the Ecuadorian constitution, a new constitution, there's this idea about the right to buen vivir, which is the right to a healthy, a good life. And so we're actually using a lot of the government's ideas of what buen vivir is, and then we're also sharing back with the government to say, hey, this is what the indigenous groups that we work with, this is how they define buen vivir. So just beyond for ourselves, it also serves as sort of a benchmark or a baseline for the government also to look at.
So for me, it's provocative.